This is the 4.2 video for day 1 of our notes. The 4.2 section is actually very similar to 4.1. We are still dealing with point slope formula. So we started working on that last week on Thursday and Friday, so this will be our third day working with point slope. So last week I introduced the formula, but here I have it for you guys again. Remember, you don't have to have this memorized because it will be on your formula chart. So point slope is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. That x1 and y1 represents one of the points that will be given to you, and then m is still our slope, just like it was in slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and just jump right in, and we're going to look at the first problem that was on your notes. It says identify the slope of the line y plus 2 equals negative 3 times x minus 2. Then identify a point that the line passes through. So what they've done here is they've given you an equation that's written in point slope form. So notice on the left side of your notes, my suggestion was to go ahead and write out your point slope formula so that you can use that to answer the questions. So I know that point slope is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. What that's going to allow me to do is look at the numbers in the formula that they gave me, or in the equation they gave me, and identify my slope, because that's going to be the number right in front of the parentheses, which in this case, my slope happens to be negative 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at x1 and y1. Now today in class we talked about the fact that since in our formula there is subtraction, we need to pay attention to the signs that are in our equation. So x1 in this case is 2. I know that that 2 is positive because there is subtraction in my formula and there's subtraction in the equation that they gave me. So I know they just replaced x1 with positive 2. However, when I go to look at y1, I notice that somehow that subtraction turned into addition. That means that that 2 had to be negative. Okay? So we have now identified our slope and a point that this line passes through. So in the first problem, we started with an equation that was given to us. Now they're going to give us some characteristics, and they're asking us to write an equation in point slope form. We want it to pass through the point 8,3, and we want it to have a slope of 1/4. So once again, my suggestion here is that we go ahead and we write point slope form down. That way we make sure that we are actually substituting the values into the correct place. So remember that formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now I can substitute my x1, y1, and m directly into my formula. The other thing that I suggested that you do is that you go ahead and label the point that they gave you and your slope. So now I'm going to replace the numbers. I have y minus y1, which in this case is 3, equals my slope, which in this case is 1/4, times x minus x1, which in this case was 8. If you have the information that they give you labeled, it's easy to replace. I know that I'm going to put this 8 where x1 is in my equation, this 3 where y1 is in my equation, and this m, which is 1/4, in where m is in my equation. Since it did ask for the equation in point slope form, I get to stop at this point. The next example in our notes adds another layer to what we've been doing because it takes us back to chapter 3. Notice this says to write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line shown. So it's going back to slope-intercept form, which we spent a lot of time in chapter 3 talking about. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Don't forget, m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. Now we actually did a little bit of this on Thursday and Friday, but when we looked at our graphs, we were actually able to see the y-intercept. Well, on this graph, if I extended my line up, I know that the y-intercept is going to occur somewhere up here, but it's off my graph. So because of that, that's why I'm going to use point slope to calculate my y-intercept. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually calculate my slope. Since they gave me a graph, I can use slope triangle. That means I am counting how many I have to move down and over to get back on my graph. So my rise is actually -4 because I went down 4, and my run is actually 2 because I went to the right 2. I'm going to simplify that, and I find out that my slope must be equal to -2. Now what I can do is I can use one of the points. I'm going to choose to use this one as my x1, y1. And then I use my slope for point slope. So I have y minus y1, which in this case is 2, equals your slope, which is -2, times x minus 1. Then, since it did ask for slope-intercept form, this is when I know I need to go ahead and solve for y. So I'm going to distribute, and I get y minus 2 equals -2x plus 2. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides in order to get y alone. And that will give me my equation, which is y equals -2x plus 4 as my final equation. The last type of example that we worked on our notes today went back to the material that we ended with in 4.1, and that was looking at that function notation again. Okay, so they're asking us to write a linear function f with the values f of 4 equals -2 and f of 12 equals 10. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to rewrite those as ordered pairs. I know that the x value is the one that is inside the parentheses next to f, and the output, or the y value, is the number that it's equal to. This is going to give me my x1, y1, and my x2, y2. Now notice I did label both of those because I need to calculate slope using slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So having those labeled will help me. So I'm doing y2 minus y1. Since this 2 is already negative, the minus minus became a plus. Then I'm going to do x2 minus x1. 10 plus 2 is 12, and 12 minus 4 is 8, and this will reduce to 3 over 2. Now I have an x1, y1, or a point, and I have slope. So now I can use point slope form. So I have y minus -2, that's how it became plus, a minus minus, equals my slope, which is 3 over 2, times x minus 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and write this in slope-intercept form because that's, the most common form that we use. And I'm going to do that by distributing 3 over 2. We get y plus 2 equals 3 over 2x minus 6. The opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2 from both sides. And when I do that, I get y equals 3 over 2x minus 8, which would be my final equation. Today I did assign homework. I showed you how to access that homework using iTunes U or by using your online textbook. Please don't forget to complete it, and I will see you tomorrow in class.